Most financial advisors follow the industry playbook. Elite advisors choose a different path. I'm Sten Morgan. Welcome to the Elite Financial Advisor Podcast, where top advisors share the strategies, mindsets, and the stories behind building a better business, adding more value, and the courage to grow through resistance. Because becoming an elite advisor is not about working harder and longer. It's about choosing a better path.
What it can't do is sit with a widow who just lost her husband last week and is wondering how she's going to manage her finances going forward.
People would tell me, I believe what you're saying, but I feel disconnected from you. Like, factually, you're bringing something of value, but I don't feel like I know you. And I had to then feel like I wonder what it is about my story that causes me to create some kind of disconnection from the person across from me.
So unless the pain of staying is greater in that person's mind than the pain of changing, why would they change? And that's our job. And no information is going to do that.
In today's episode, we're going to be hanging out with John Gatewood. John's been in the business for over 45 years. His new book coming out, The Listening Advisor. What I love about hanging out with John is his focus on communication as a superpower for advisors. This is something I learned later in my career. I wish I would have focused on it on day one. And so today, let's get into the nuance of communication, and not just how you talk about product, but how you connect with people. Are you aware of how others are experiencing you? This is a skill we should all be working on, and John has some great ideas. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sten. This is exciting.
I always love chatting with the guests before, but with us talking, I'm like, this is good. We need to make sure we try to include this. So we'll make sure we talk about all the stuff we were unpacking together before the call. But thank you for taking the time. I do appreciate when advisors have been in the business like you have, reached levels of success. You don't need to be doing this right now, but for some reason you're building frameworks and saying, hey, here's the lessons I've learned, and I want to leave those. And I love the word used, I want to leave a legacy to the industry. And I don't think most advisors think that way.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. My goal is really to do something where I can make an impact on advisors going forward, especially because of the observation that I've made over the years is that when I look at what separates the great advisors from the ones who are average, when I look at it, to me, it's that authentic human connection that they can make with their clients.
Sure. And
authentic connection is going to come through communication mastery, but it means two things, really. It means listening first and foremost, so the client feels truly heard and we understand what they think. But then also speaking in a way so clearly and convincingly that it motivates people to confidently take action on the things that we're advising for them, for their best interest. So
when I hear you talk about your framework, it brings up in me a lot of the things I wish I would have been told when I got into the business. So you've been in the business for 45 years, been on the Barron's lists, by every standard. At least when I got in the business, you're if you could be like John someday, you've done it. You've accomplished everything you need to accomplish. But I'd love to hear, how did you get into the business? Was it kind of the pretty traditional path? Did you do what everybody told us to do initially and then kind of woke up one day and was like, wait, what am I doing? What was that progression like for you?
So it's interesting. So how I got into the business was that my father was in the life insurance business, and I grew up in Washington, D.C. He saw at the time that there was a niche that was missing, and that was the coordination of advisors in the high net worth space. So what he did was he decided that he wanted to become the central advisor to these high net worth clients who had complex estate issues. And he had a conference room where he had one wall painted black, and then he would bring in the high net worth family, the attorney, the accountant, the stockbroker, and the banker. And then they would map out whatever their next strategic plan was on the wall, and then he'd pull out a Polaroid camera and we'd take a picture of that, and he would give that to each of the advisors and to the client, and that was their meeting summary. And then what they did was he had a team of professionals who would contact each of the advisors in the room to make sure they are following through on whatever their specific part of the deal was. And then he would provide quarterly reports, comprehensive reports to each of these families, and he charged a fee for that. Nobody did. Imagine this was back in the
Oh
'60s.
yeah. Yeah. Well ahead of his time.
And then, but he was brilliant. So, and what he did really was find a way to make the complex simple. And the blackboard Polaroid system was really what he mastered. So
Okay.
I worked with him for a year between my freshman and sophomore year. And what I wanted to do was to become the central advisor to the mass affluent. So I wanted to be the person that brought all those things together for people that, had the ability to save money for retirement and then put them on a path to do so. But back then we had the Glass-Steagall Act, so we weren't able to cross sell products.
Yeah.
But I still used the rudimentary, planning tools that they had back then, which were mainly a yellow pad.
Sure. Oh yeah, good old yellow pad.
Yeah.
What's interesting about your
And
dad is I think I've heard a lot of people talk about that idea of I want to be the central advisor. It sounds great.
yeah,
It's the implementation that falls apart.
absolutely.
But it sounds like he did that part well, like following up, providing a report, like to say you're that person and to be that person, I think are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, he was really a precursor to what today is the family office.
Yeah.
But my vision was to provide that to the mass affluent. I wanted people to have a plan that had metrics to it that we could track so that we can make decisions. Are we ahead of plan, behind plan, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not know much about communication skills when I started. So how I got into the business was I decided to find where I could get the best training. And I found this guy in Chicago by the name of Al Granum. And he had a system, what he called the one card system.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he had a whole talking framework that walked you through the whole sales process. So before I even started, I learned the entire book. I could recite every word for every step. And so when I started to see prospects, I would just start going through my script. I wasn't really sure what I was trying to do. It took me to figure out a little while to figure out what that actually meant to get, decisions and, ask the types of questions that we're supposed to do today. But a funny story, when I started, this was in 1981. I don't know if you remember what interest rates were back then.
Very high.
Yeah, very high. The Fed fund rates were like 17%. You get a mortgage at 17%. And so when I moved to Chicago, I was supposed to get a list of 100 people that I could call. Well, I didn't know anybody except for Al. So I started to call through the yellow pages. Now, if you're going to start in the yellow pages, I don't know if people even remember what that was. Where do you start? So I went to the A's.
A's.
And so, you have accountants, architects, attorneys. So I decided to pick on architects. They weren't really sure what they did or how much money they made, but I figured I'm just going to start calling. So I started calling these guys, getting appointments, and I found out they were a broker than I was because they didn't have any business and I had no money. But that's how I got my start. And then,
would you say that the repetition of that was helpful? Of kind of like conversations, communication.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the key was like Grannon would tell me, he said, our role is to find ideas that move people's minds. And the reason is that he said the decision to buy something someday is a logical decision, or the decision to start saving today is a logical decision. Everybody says, yeah, I should start saving today. But the decision to start saving today is an emotional decision, and emotions are caught, not taught. And so that's where this whole concept of mastering communication on the speaking side came.
Yeah.
But then on the listening side, he was an advocate of of a questionnaire where we'd walk through and he would talk about not just the facts, but the feeling facts. I mean, what's really important to people? How do we find out the deeper emotions? Because that's what we have to learn in order to motivate people to take action. So
Wow.
that's kind of the start of this.
What was your progression? I think my mind is very logical. I think a lot of advisors listening, that's a helpful thing to be an advisor is you're a problem solver by nature. The scripting I would try to practice as a young advisor, like that made sense to me. I was like, I could say
Yeah.
that thing in that order. But what took me time and maybe some life is like the nuance, the energy. It's not a performance, but it's like to make somebody feel something. You could say something the same as somebody else, but like it comes across so different if somebody
Yes.
really knows how to say something. Help take me through that with your progression on like the difference between having a script and repeating it, and then actually like moving somebody in a meeting, like they feel something when you say it.
I love that you talk about the script because my belief is that the meeting is not the dress rehearsal. The meeting is the performance. The dress rehearsal, the hard work has to happen outside of the meeting. So what I would do is I would try to find things, ways to explain concepts, ways to ask better questions, ways to listen better, ways to learn nonverbal cues, understanding how well I actually presented in meetings. So the great thing about the book is that it walks through my experience, mostly of all the mistakes that I've made, the actual meetings. And then from there, I was able to come up with some principles in terms of how to communicate. And the book is really made up in two phases. One is our mind shift. How do we think about communication? And we're in a different world today. Think about it. Everybody's so busy. Everybody's time starved. They're distracted. We are fighting for their attention. So unless we are mastering how we communicate in that meeting, we may not be landing with them. We may not be, creating that connection and motivating them to action. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I do think we are moving into a stage of like it's not about the information. Like if you thought at one point you had this special idea that no one else had, or you could access it quicker or visually show it, it's like no, like I don't know if that's going to be a differentiator much longer. I'm a big believer in now, and I fought this because I think when I was a young advisor, I was like the smartest advisor should win. Like if I have better ideas than another advisor, I should get the client, and it just didn't always happen. And I was like, it's the
Right.
advisor that's more fun to be around. And I would get so frustrated because I wasn't naturally the life of the party. I wasn't that rainmaker advisor that just happened to have a bunch of friends. And sometimes those
Yeah.
advisors had success faster than I did. And until I was able to tap into like, no, can I move somebody? Like, can I emotionally get them to realize the cost of not acting? Like, and after trying to avoid that for so long, and it's the drum you're beating now, every advisor listening, if you are not building communication as a superpower, someday you will regret it. And I don't know if that's too
Exactly.
strong of a statement, but I think based on your content, you'd say like, no, we all have to get better at that.
Absolutely. So what made you decide to then go to the communication route? I mean, was there a turning point for you
Necessity.
or what?
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay. Yeah.
I think as I use the analogy sometimes, like if in baseball, the idea of like if you're only closing, getting 100 batting average, the solution's not just get more at bats. It's how do you have a better close rate? How do you hit more, get on base more? And so I was looking, I was like, for some reason, and this was when I was young, I was like, okay, I'm young. That's a factor. I might get in a room with somebody and they may notice I'm young initially. But whether it's like the Doogie Howser effect, it's like, no, but if I'm just that good at my job, like if I can speak so confidently and surprise them, I bet my close rate goes up. And so I think it was something I fought until I was like, I think I just need to lean into this. Because the great thing about communication skills is it'll help you everywhere. Like you'll be a better advisor, but I have better conversations with my kids. I think I'm a better listener with my wife now. Like everything that makes you a great communicator, which in part of what you're teaching is like the listening side of it. You will make more money, you will close more business, but like it has affected every part of my life. So I'm a big believer for every new advisor. If somebody could have grabbed me on day one and said, this is the skill you need to have, I wish they would have told me like, learn to move people, to motivate them to take action. Like I wish I would have had that sooner.
Yeah, I mean, you said that beautifully. And there's a lot of things of what you said. First of all, that information alone doesn't motivate people. How do we know that? because gyms are full in January and empty by March. Right? Look at how many different technical things that we can, a Fitbit or, programs where you can track your physical fitness. Well, we still, decide to sleep in and not work out, or we go over drink and overeat. That's because it's not the information that motivates us. And so the question is, how do we communicate in a way where we're reaching them emotionally, right? You mentioned it's really the emotions that drive that decision.
Yeah.
It's like, a fellow won't go and see the doctor until he actually has a heart attack. And then all of a sudden he changes his behavior.
Sure.
So, and when I think about motivation, people have what I call the status quo bias, right? It's easy to stay where you are. It's working. So the question is, if I'm to change, how much pain do I need to be feeling in order to make that change? So unless the pain of staying is greater in that person's mind than the pain of changing, why would they change? And that's our job. And no information is going to do that. You can do that. Why? Because information alone doesn't move people. And information is going to be commoditized. Like AI is going to commoditize all the things that we learned to do. We learned everything about estate planning, investments, portfolio management, tax planning. Well, that's all going to be commoditized through AI. It's already being done. So what is there that's left? It's us, right? It's that ability for us to master our communication skills so we can have an authentic connection that motivates people to action. So what I tell people is that communication mastery is the tool. Authentic connection is the outcome. Authentic connection is what wins clients who refer, advocate, and never leave. And it's also the one thing that AI cannot replace. I mean, it's already doing portfolio analysis, creating financial plans immediately, doing all these things that we were trained to do. Yet, what it can't do is sit with a widow who just lost her husband last week and is wondering how she's going to manage her finances going forward, or a couple who's retired and the market drops by 30%, and they're more afraid about whether or not they're going to have to go to work, or an executive who gets $1 million bonus and he's trying to decide, should I buy a new house, improve my house, or should I set some of that money aside for retirement? Or a young couple, they're trying to decide, gee, I want to enjoy time to my life now, but I also know that I need to save for the future. How do I make that decision? AI can provide information, but it can't be human. It cannot make that connection. That's what you and I do. And that's why I love the things that I've heard from your podcast, because you resonate that. You're trying to live that, which is awesome.
Yeah, I do hear, I remember the saying where it was like, people change when they get enough information to, feel enough pain to, or like are moved to do it. And I look at my progression. I think I started with like, I just need to kind of harp on like the cost of not taking action. Like, you're going to regret this. And then I found like those meetings, while that was somewhat effective, it was almost like, I'm not really ending on a high note.
Right.
And, and I think about like, am I the coach at halftime that's like pushing everybody like a shame-based motivation, or am I calling people up to something? And so I kind of had to like audit my style. I was like, it was kind of effective, but I was like, am I leaving people hopeful and excited to take action, or am I like painting such a dark picture that they're like, fine, I'll do it? How have you balanced that? Where do you tend to find yourself leaning towards?
I think that's a great point, Sten. One thing that I talk about in the book is the messenger is the message. So to a certain extent, more than what you say is how confidently you say it. It's your personal conviction.
Yeah.
Like let's say we have a drop in the market, the tariff drop. People are calling, they're concerned. They're more interested in seeing how confident you are than in what you're telling them. Not that what you're telling them is not important. Information is important from this perspective. People fear what they don't understand. So when you have people giving you pushback, there's something inside that they don't understand that's causing that fear. So this is why understanding, clarifying, being able to communicate effectively, clearly, and with motivation, so that when people go through these turbulent markets, they don't fear. They don't start calling their advisors and trying to move the cash because they're thinking, "Oh my God, the whole world's falling apart." No,
Yeah.
they're confident, and that's our job, right?
Yeah.
We have to be that rock for them. And
Yeah.
I love that you see, how can I be better at motivating people? Because you are the message. You see what I mean?
Yeah. That's good. How has your life story affected your ability to communicate? I think there's some advisors maybe in their 20s right now. They're like, I'm sure John could sit with a very successful business owner and like call them out on something and they would appreciate the truth. But then somebody right now is like, I'm not experienced enough. I don't have enough business success to, because the nuance in communication, I think sometimes in a scenario comes to my mind where a business owner was kind of telling me about how all this stuff was going wrong and this thing and this thing. And I don't think I would have been able to do this 10 years ago, but my instinct kicked in and it was like, I said, Mike, everything you're saying right now, do you know the only common denominator? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's you. Like, you're blaming everybody else, but like you are in a position to make these decisions and everything you're talking about, and the outcome is not what you want. Like, have you ever thought about that? 10 years ago, I would have been like, why would I ever say that to a successful business owner? But somehow, eventually, life has taught me like to say the right thing at the right time. How would you coach people? Because that is a nuance. And what has that been like for you?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because, one of the things that I've been responsible for over the years, I mean, I built my firm and sold it 5 years ago, but training, how do you train somebody? How do you develop somebody? And that's one thing that I think firms don't do well. I think we have a training crisis in our industry, and it's going to get worse because, as I said, AI is going to be commoditizing and doing all the things that we've been trained to do. Not we have to have the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But that skill is that communication skill.
Yeah. In your story, when you look back, because you did have your dad as an example, but you
Yeah,
seeing him, and I'm sure at some point seeing him do things and being like, how does he do it? Like somehow he's just become
yeah,
this and then you had to go on your own journey of like, I can try to replicate him, but then someday you had enough reps or experience, emotional
yeah,
intelligence to where you became the person in the room that was like speaking hard
yeah.
truth or calling people
That
up.
yes. So what I did, my dad had a principle that he would say. He said, "There's no competition for excellence. So if you're excellent at what you do,
Mhm.
you won't have competition." Now, I then added to that by saying that, but excellence is not a destination; it's a journey, right? Because we'll never be, we'll never have that final excellence, and we should be always evaluating where is it that I'm not excellent today. So I made a commitment to do a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to become a master at estate and business planning and tax planning. And I would jump into cases that I had no idea what I was doing, but that was the best way to learn
Yeah.
because I believe that experience is a factor of exposure, not time in the business. So it's interesting. We have different levels of advisors in our firm. One is the beginning level is the wealth coordinator. So it's an apprentice type of staff
Yep.
program. And when you have two wealth coordinators coming in, one is at working with the clients with lower levels of wealth, and another is working with the ones at the highest level. The one with the highest level gains knowledge much faster than this one,
Mm.
simply because they're being exposed. So
Yeah.
what I would advise people and what I would do, I would try to get myself exposed, involved, in all of these different cases. Don't worry about jumping in and making a fool of yourself or doing something wrong. People like to do business with young people,
Yeah.
and they like to do business with people who are trying to do the best for them, right?
Yeah.
And so the other part was the communication skills. I went to every conference, I learned all these different tools where I would try to figure out what are the things that are going to make me a better communicator. Um, and it's interesting you say that like listening, and that's the title of the book. We do what we try to do here. We should also be doing at home. The problem is that I'm so good at when I'm in front of a client.
Yeah.
When I get home, my wife says, because I have hearing aids, you have perfect hearing, but your listening sucks. Okay.
Ouch.
That's not improved.
Oh man, the people that love you tell you the most truth. She loves you a lot.
Exactly.
So the book, The Listening Advisor, give us some more. Is that book out?
So it's going to be launched in September, but there is a website right now. So it's thelisteningadvisor.com. Has great information on it. And I believe that if somebody follows the framework of the book and really applies themselves, you will have the opportunity to become a better advisor going forward. And it applies really to the experienced advisors and the young advisors, because there's plenty of people that are experienced that are like what you were saying. Why is it this young guy who started after me, his business is thriving? Because there's something that they're doing to make this connection, because we're real people, right? We people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Well, it only comes through connection, but you have to be able to communicate. So the first half is really how we think about it's our mind shift.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the fact that time moves at different speeds, right? When you're in a presentation and you are listening, time goes slower than to the presenter who's speaking. It's funny. We had somebody yesterday who was making a CE presentation to the guys, and there was 5 minutes left, and she said, "Oh my God, there's only 5 minutes left," and she only been halfway through. But that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
So how do you understand that dynamic in a meeting?
Yeah.
So anyway, there's different
How
things.
Would you? Yeah, I'm trying to think practically, because as I talk about this at events, sometimes I kind of get a blank stare. Like it's like I hear what you're saying, but like I don't know what that means for me. Like, how do I get better at that?
Yeah. Yes.
There was kind of two sides. One was I got a CFP early in my career. I tried to learn a bunch of information, and then I was like, oh, I need to get better at presenting this information so people understand it. Like I need to get better at taking complex things and making them simple. Like that was kind of one focus area. The other for me is when I started trying to figure out, like, what is it like to sit across from me, and what do I make people feel? And that's a hard question to ask, because you have to be ready for what people tell you. And people would tell me, I believe what you're saying, but I feel disconnected from you. Like factually, you're bringing something of value, but like I don't feel like I know you. And I had to then feel like I wonder what it is about my story that causes me to create some kind of disconnection from the person across from me. And I had to get better at like being vulnerable, sitting in silence, not always trying to have an answer right away. Like it was hard for me to say, that's a great question. Let me look into it and get back to you. And people saying like, no, I expect that to be the answer sometimes, because there's no way you always have an answer to the question I have. And so for me, it was like a few different areas to focus on. So for those listening, and this will probably be covered in your book to some degree, it's good communication is not just good communication. Like there's different elements to it. Listening, speaking. Yes. So what comes up in you as I lay that out?
Oh, that's so awesome what you just said. First of all, think about, how did you learn to make this change? You had to experience, right? So you were experiencing it, and you say, "Oh my gosh, why am I not coming across the way I would hope that they would?" And you figured it out. So the thing about communication mastery, it's not a silver bullet. It's a whole bunch of things. So what you just listed are just a couple of things that I actually talk about in the book, but it's knowing those things, it's experiencing those things, being aware of those things. that's how they're going to learn, is by simply doing it, right?
Yeah.
But it takes hard work.
Yeah.
And that's the question, is, are people willing to do the hard work?
As we wrap up, this question just popped in my mind. What would you say to the introverted advisor right now that is like squirming in their seat, being challenged by John to become a great communicator? Like, because some of those people are so technically sound, they want to be in this business, they have so much to offer. But if we're saying the advisor of the future has to be a dynamic, motivational, inspiring communicator, how do we package that slightly differently for them without not challenging?
Right. I mean, so first of all, communication is and isn't a personality trait. Some people are going to be natural in terms of their ability to go and, just make conversation with people, and others will maybe be more introverted. But it is a trainable skill. And that's why, learning all the different principles in the book is important. But if I really couldn't and am not able to build a thriving practice because my skills aren't there, then what I would do is figure out what are the skills that you have, and how can you leverage that with somebody else that does have that communication ability?
Yeah.
The one thing about today's environment is that people like to work in teams.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be tough for some people going forward to be the solo advisor, just because life is different now. But yeah, that's
a good challenge.
One,
I do think there's something.
thought.
Yeah, I think there's something fair about saying, if you are the technician today and that's all you have to bring, and you are trying to run a solo practice, the more time that passes, I think the more difficult that will be for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair, that whether you like it or not, we can't control the forces of change of technology in the industry, but the industry is moving towards, to get people's attention, you will have to be able to out communicate other people, because the technical side is being levelized in a lot of ways.
So can I give you an idea, just based, because you said some things very important about connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, connection before content. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding before advising, their story before your solution. So if you can get that order of how you communicate or you connect with people, that's where I would start.
Yeah, that's practical. And I think there's blind spots in that. And I think the courage to ask somebody else to give you that feedback, maybe it doesn't have to be a client, maybe it can be a coworker, maybe somebody in your family. But I think a lot of us think we're good communicators and we're not. And there's a blind spot there.
But how many people have actually videotaped their presentation? That is the scariest thing in the world.
Oh yeah, if you want to cringe,
I remember the first time I was videotaped. I was more afraid of the guy that I was videotaping for than I was, just because it was scary.
Yeah.
So I videotaped, and when it was all done, man, I had sweat under my armpits like crazy.
Oh man, yes.
and then we started to look at it, and the first thing I noticed that, oh my God, the back of my head is so flat. I always thought it was round back there. And then my eyebrows kept going like this, and I was trying to hold them down. I said, "Oh my God, do I actually do that?"
Yes.
So, I tell you that videotaping is a great thing to do. And now that all meetings are videotaped anyway,
there it is.
Though, right there it is.
Yeah.
Go and watch yourself. Have a coach or a manager or an accountability partner. But
that's good.
Anyway,
I love the practicality. So I love the idea of flipping your approach as far as like, what are you bringing first? And it's like connection before content.
Connection before content.
And then practice. I think the filming yourself, if you are brave enough, like it won't be great, but it'll get better. And it's like, if you want to, look back in 12 months and be like, wow, my communication 10x'd, you got to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already worried about how this is going to look worth it.
It's going to be great. All right, my friend John, this was fun. Everybody be looking forward to his book. I think we need more people in the industry talking about communication, because that will be a skill we all need in the future, and a lot of people will be playing catch up with that.
Yeah. Oh man, and keep doing what you're doing, Sten. I love what you're doing with the Elite Advisor Network.
Thank you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
All right.